Testing. Oh, Tyler Hatch, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well, Tyler. This might be confusing. We're each named Tyler. Let's try to keep it
That's
straight.
right. It's the Tyler show today.
I'll be the funny one. You can be the good-looking one.
Yeah, right. All right. So today I've got with me Tyler Hatch from DFI Forensics. So Tyler, we've talked at length about DFI Forensics. Security obviously being a hot topic these days. I was excited to have you on just because I really want to do a bit of a deeper dive on DFI Forensics, the service you provide, whatever products you have in your portfolio, just to really flesh out, number one, what you have, what you're offering, what your service is, and then number two, I just sort of want to get a little bit into what you're seeing in the market out there in terms of like data breaches and security and compliances and all the rest. I mean, there's so much that's changing right now in the dental landscape for us, in terms of HIPAA compliance, PIPEDA, and all these security breaches and ransomware and all the rest of it. It's a big topic, so I'll try to keep it under an hour today.
Yeah, okay, well, careful what you wish for, because when you wind me up about what I do, I tend to go on like a Tasmanian devil, so I get passionate about it. But yeah, forensics, so in general, the way I break it down, forensics is gathering evidence for use in court. Traditionally, digital means that we do it on computers and cell phones and servers and all those kind of things. So it's like CSI on digital devices and things like that. So what we do is primarily grouped into two categories. So first of all, we help lawyers when they want to determine what happened when a lawsuit revolves around some kind of event. So we tell the story of that event based on evidence that we gather from various devices and things like that. So that's about half or more of what we do. And the other half is obviously responding to cyber attacks that come up on businesses of all kinds. And it's very important to understand exactly what happened and how an attacker was successful in doing what they did. How did they breach the network? What information, if any, was stolen, or was it just a ransomware attack? And it really branches out into not just a fact-finding mission, but it's very important for us to get those facts into the hands of, say, like a lawyer who might have to then give the client legal advice on what their reporting obligations is. So there's a really multidisciplinary approach to the whole aspect, and we play a pretty important part in that. But it is a very multidisciplinary approach. Right.
So if I look at the security world as an entirety, so there's like, are you guys are more like, I guess, for lack of a better word, pardon me because I'm ignorant, you guys are kind of more the cleanup crew? Is that a right way to put it?
Fairly close. So you're right. If you want to get really simplistic, there's two categories of the security industry, which is most of the people who are trying to help clients prevent an attack and minimize the business risk that cybersecurity poses to that business. The moment we start using digital, anything, computers, email, the internet, anything like that, you're exposing your business to some level of risk. So cybersecurity, strictly speaking, is on the left side of the breach, if you will. So we're trying to prevent an attack, minimize your exposure, minimize your risk. But you can only do that to certain degrees. There's always going to be human error. There's always going to be new style of attacks. So when something does happen anyway, once a breach occurs, then we are the guys that come in and deal with it while it's going on and after the fact. Once it's kind of remediated, we help clients detect and identify what happened, get the intruder out, and then do a post investigation where we're determining the facts. And that's when we might work with legal counsel to determine what reporting obligations flow from the event. And so, it's really important to do that fact-finding initiative if you want to avoid it from happening again. Because if you never know what happened, it makes it very difficult to start shoring up the gaps in your security. So it's a really, really important aspect. And we hope that nobody ever has to go through a cyber attack to get to that point. But, the statistics are just rising all the time. We all know that. And in 2020, it's really not an option to not pay attention to this kind of thing. It's just a question of what are you going to do? And I always advise people to just, at the bare minimum, don't make yourself an easy target.
Right. So are you working with people who are more preventative, and then you're kind of like I guess you provide for sort of more of an insurance policy to say, yeah, make sure you're protected. Work with, like, are you working with partners on the front end protection side as well?
We do, yeah. We worked with a number of strategic partners. And like you mentioned, a lot of the stuff that drives the initiatives tends to be compliance regulations like HIPAA and PIPEDA and these kinds of things. And that's great. There's no problem with that being a driving force behind change, because left to their own devices, a lot of businesses might not recognize it as being important enough until they get hit. So as long as people are paying attention to it by some measure, that's great. So there's a lot of our partners that specialize in those kind of compliance regulations. And we work with them and we recommend them to our clients in a number of scenarios. And really the industries are very broad. Manufacturing, people that process credit card payments, all kinds of things. Things you might not even traditionally view as a digital company. But for DFI solutions, what we always try to do is help people prepare for the worst. So that looks an awful like having a fire escape plan, for example. So we help clients prepare what we call an incident response plan, which sets out, the varying, it's essentially a playbook to run when a security incident happens. And it helps guide their organization through the process so that everybody knows what to do and who to call when things get really serious. And maybe you can't handle it internally. You might need an external specialist like us to come in and do some forensics and help you determine what happened, because it's a really specialized skill set. So companies have two choices. They can either hire an internal team, which to hire an internal team to be on call for that event is enormously expensive. You have to have multi people on the clock 24 hours a day. And when organizations get really big, they tend to do that. But for smaller and medium-sized businesses, it's a great thing to outsource to a qualified professional like DFI Forensics. So we're there to assist your IT company and your organization as specialists if this event occurs. And the statistics are there to support the fact that most people should at least have a plan in place. So we try to make our solutions affordable enough to be attractive to all kinds of businesses, regardless of size.
Okay. And now, so that brings me to the protection side of it. Like, no matter how well protected you are from a security breach, I'm assuming there's still a percentage of breaches that still happen, regardless of how well protected you are.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you only have to look at the news from this week. So a couple of the big ones that jumped out to me, and it's only Thursday, by the way. So the CPA, the Canadian Professional Association of Accountants, had their website breached.
Right.
If you don't think that an organization like that has a sophisticated IT team, that they're not paying attention to cybersecurity, that they don't have a plan, you're wrong. And it still happens to them. So somebody attacked their website and got in and got access to a lot of their members' critical information. We're talking email addresses, passwords, really private data. So if it can happen to a company like that, it can happen to a lot of companies. And the other one that this week, and I'm sure you've heard of it because it was big news, was Honda. Honda's worldwide production was shut down for a number of days. I'm not even sure if they're up and running, but they got hit with a ransomware attack. And again, we're talking the global operations of Honda. That's a company that's going to have a lot of eyes on their cybersecurity and their IT network, and it still happens. So
and they still got hit. That's crazy.
Yeah. So you can minimize the risk all you want, but things still happen, and you just have to prepare for it. And imagine the loss. I can't imagine the losses that they experienced this week in shutting down their production. Who knows how long, and especially in the height of a crisis like COVID, we're starting to come out of it in some parts of the world. But man, for some companies, how bad is this year looking, right?
That's a double whammy, right? Like, and so walk me through a scenario. I'm Honda in this scenario. All of a sudden I'm seeing, oh crap, our databases are being locked down. Oh, I think we have a virus or something happening here. Now, I'm in touch with my security provider, but then I'm assuming your phone starts ringing pretty quickly in that situation.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happens. We try to be available 24/7, and so I get the lucky job of having the secret red phone next to my bed at all times. But yeah, I mean, basically, start to see, they start to get messages and security messages on their screen saying you've been hit with this type of ransomware attack, and here's how to contact us. They get instructions for what to do next. And so then the question becomes, do we have a data backup? Have we prepared for this? And most companies now, well, I don't know about most, but a lot of companies are now aware of a ransomware attack, and they're doing things like making a data backup, which is wonderful. So the question is your data backup sufficiently removed from your other data so that it's protected? Because a lot of people make a backup, but it's also just on their IT network. So it gets encrypted just like any of their other files. And encryption means that it gets locked up and only the attacker has the key. So when we say a ransomware attack, they demand money in payment for the encryption key. So if you want to unlock your data and get all your stuff back, there's generally two ways to do it. You either pay the ransom, restore to an earlier point in time on the basis of your data backup. So then a company might say, okay, listen, we have a backup. It's not encrypted. Great, let's roll back to an earlier point in time. So then the question is, at what point in time is it safe to do that? You have to determine the origin of the event, because if you back up to a time that isn't before that point, it's just going to reinfect your system and you've lost all this time now and you go through the whole process again. So that's where a forensics team comes in and sort of identifies exactly the origin event and tells the company, okay, it's safe to restore to a point in time prior to this event. And so that's a very good, common typical thing.
That is a really sophisticated, a very, I guess, like you said, it's a very niche thing that a service that you guys provide, right?
It is, yeah. There's not a lot of people doing it. A lot of people, as far as I can observe, are going into cybersecurity, and I always encourage students at local universities to consider forensics, because it's not only super interesting, but there's a lot of demand for it. Now, on the other hand, if I was a student, job opportunities might be more readily available in the cybersecurity sector as opposed to forensics, because there's not a lot of people doing it. So I can understand the attractiveness of choosing one or the other as a student as well. But yeah, it's an interesting, it's a tough decision for them.
Well, it almost feels like they would, like, if I were a student coming out of school, I'd be probably more interested in going to the forensics first. And, if I stay there, I stay there. But then at least that way, if I go into the preventative side of things, I can see where a lot of these problems are stemming from, or where this attack may have originated. Is that the correct assumption?
That is, no, it's 100%. And it's interesting that those two areas, there's a very clear line in the sand where they separate, but we work in a giant circle. It's a constantly revolving circle of, we figure out what happened, we relay that information to the cybersecurity team to help the company avoid it from happening again. And we're just always kind of working together. So although we specialize in one side of it, when I say that we have a number of strategic partners, that's what I'm referring to. So, we're not under the same company, but we recognize that our skill sets align, and we can provide a lot of clients with the full breadth of services that they require together. Right. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about backing up and where this, like the server location? So like, it's still a lot of tech talk for people I find these days, like just trying to figure out, okay, hold on. So I need to have a server, like say if I have an office, say it's a medical office or something in healthcare. So I've got a server on site, which is basically handing out information to all my terminals in the office. But then I have a backup server at a remote location.
Right.
That is completely separate and firewalled away from my office. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there's actually probably three ways you could look at it. You can have information on the same server, but set it up in a way, and this is where a good IT architectural specialist can set it up in a way where it's segmented, so that a certain portion that contains your backup is in a separate location, although it's on that same server. It can be, on a different segment of that network, so that it might not get encrypted along with your other files that are accessible to, say, the everyday user, like your employees who might need to access information quickly. So there is ways you can do it on the same server. You can also go to a completely separate physical server, which a lot of companies do. And then there's a third option, which is cloud. So there's a lot of services that provide for contemporaneous backups being made in the cloud all the time. But every time you change a file, it's automatically synced. And that is a really, really effective way to have a backup. And there's a whole number of services, and it's very popular in healthcare. And a lot of companies. Yeah, it is. And in fact, there's one story where the solution, when it was kind of new a few years ago, this whole cloud issue and server cloud backups, there was a very famous case in the U.S. where a hospital got hit with a ransomware attack, and they actually went through the process of paying to get their data back, and didn't realize in the panic that they actually had a cloud backup that they could have restored to. So,
Wow.
yeah, but that was a pretty isolated example. It's just interesting that they kind of forgot that they had this service. So,
Mm.
but yeah, there's a number of solutions. You just have to ask the right questions and what's right for your organization in terms of cost, availability, technology. All of it comes into play, and so it's really important to just get really custom solutions.
When I think of a cloud-based storage solution, and maybe it's because I'm an older generation, but I always think, is that as secure as a brick and mortar server?
It is, because it's really just, there's still a physical server. Their data isn't really just floating around in the air or in the clouds. It's actually on a server somewhere.
Mhm.
It's just a safe way to do it, and companies save the money of having these large physical servers on premise, and renting out space for a giant organization like a Dropbox or something like that who contains your data is really effective way to implement something like that for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. And yes, it can be very safe. There, obviously, you access it through passwords and two-factor authentication and a number of security measures that they all offer. And as long as you're paying attention to enabling those security features, 100%, I would endorse it as a solution for anybody. Now, and the other thing that companies have to consider, and this is important for dentistry and other medical fields that are under HIPAA regulations and things like that, where is the data stored? So where is that physical server? So you've got to ask the questions of those providers to make sure that if you're bound to keep that information in Canada or in the province in which you're doing business, that server needs to be there. And the companies are aware of this, and so they're happy to provide the solutions. And there's data centers around all kinds of locations in North America and the world. So
I've noticed that. I've noticed Canada's there's a few more server locations popping up in Canada now.
yeah, there are, and some are coming to Vancouver. A lot of them tend to be in the eastern locations. Some are in Montreal, Toronto, things like that. But yeah, they're really everywhere. It depends on your needs and what are being offered. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's kind of two ways that a company can do it. So when we're talking kind of your wheelhouse, which is the dentist and their practice, and I find that a lot of them have managed IT service. So they might outsource their IT service because it doesn't make sense to have a full-time person. The larger the practice, obviously, the more likely that they will have an in-house person. But
It's cost prohibitive, though. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, but all of these things, it's okay to have managed service. You just have to ask the right questions and make sure that somebody is paying attention to it. And there's a bit of a shift now where the onus to look at cybersecurity, it's not as easy for a business to pass it off to somebody else and say, I hired somebody to do this, so I didn't pay attention. There's really been a focus on getting the key decision makers in an organization to pay attention. And so there's regulations and laws now geared towards making those people responsible.
Mm-hmm.
They're not punitive, I don't think. They're encouraging companies to be responsible in terms
Not
of
yet.
somebody who has influence in the organization has to pay attention.
Mm-hmm. So with regards to that, so like I was watching a webinar this morning talking about the way that your computers and your servers need to be configured in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, like if a dentist wants to do a HIPAA compliant Zoom meeting with a patient, because Zoom now does offer that HIPAA compliant healthcare service, which is expensive. It costs people money to use that, which is why, I think Zoom's gotten a bad name recently because a lot of people use the free version, not realizing that there's a HIPAA compliant version, which you need to actually pay for. But even if a dentist or a healthcare professional is using the HIPAA compliant Zoom, do you know, like, are there like sort of ways to configure your network in the office? Like, do they have to consider that stuff as well? Like the way their LAN is configured or any of that stuff as well? It's a tricky question. I was trying to figure that out, but I think
I would never discourage it, but I also don't encourage people to have redundant solutions if it's not necessary. No, everybody wants to be cost effective, and I don't think we're doing anybody a service if we suggest that people just go out and spend money on unnecessary things. We always want to make sure that you're talking to the right people and getting the right advice, and again, just custom fit solutions to your organization, because, you know, let's face it, in any industry, there's people that are kind of out there to make a sale and get your business. And then there's others who are genuinely concerned for the welfare of your company and put their solutions as if they're being tailored to the business owner. You want to get the advice that you would be given in the circumstance. So there are levels. So you just want to make sure that you're, you know, at least talking to multiple people, asking questions, and you know, just thinking about it and gathering information before you make a decision. But yeah, that's all great stuff. You could set up, you know, VPNs and, you know, a virtual private network. So, you know, that encrypts your data and all these kind of safety things. And then using additionally a paid version of Zoom that's HIPAA compliant to make sure that you're ultra compliant. But if you talk to a specialist and they say, you know, for your business, you know, that is redundant. You're doing two things that are the same and you're paying for both of them. Maybe that's not a good thing to be doing. So,
right.
Yeah,
it's just knowing what's required, right? And I think you're right. Like, so for me, from my perspective, I think, you know, as long as your network is secure, you're protected, you have somebody like Tyler Hatch, you know, on speed dial with the red phone there in case something does happen, and that you're using a HIPAA compliant version of it, like, because video conferencing started to become a popular thing now. And if you're sharing personal medical information across a service like this, then, you know, the first question that you want to address is to make sure that it's secure and it's compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's not going to go away now that we've kind of all experienced this COVID thing where we were forced to use technologies like that. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's actually not that bad. And if it can be done safely and securely, it's really convenient. And so we're not going to see it slow down. It's only going to take off from here, I think.
Yeah, because we've built that now into Dentist on Demand. So we've got the HIPAA compliant Zoom, and we integrate it with a scheduler so that the patient can just come in, pick the time they want to talk to the dentist, and they can have that initial conversation. And then we digitize the forms, again, in a very HIPAA compliant manner with FormStack. And then the patient can now go to their encrypted, their URL where everything's secure, fill out those patient forms, submit them, and then request a time for a secondary video consult with the dentist. And what we're trying to do with that is we're trying to make it like, I think we're going to start seeing more bottlenecks at the dental office now, where, like, because they're so restricted on how they're going to see patients and how they, you know, with the PPE, donning and doffing of that, and, you know, only being able to see, you know, 6 patients a day versus the 35 they're used to seeing. If we can sort of alleviate that somehow by putting some of the initial consult discussions online, I think we might help streamline that process a little bit for dentists. So that's why security is such a big, such a big topic right now, for not for us, but for everybody.
Yeah, for everybody. But I love to hear you guys particularly talking about it, because when we talk about dentists on demand focusing on security for their clients, it's great to have a one place solution where dentists can go, and they're not wasting their time now, you know, 5,000 practices individually going out and getting consultation. They can come to one place. So you, as dentists on demand, have gotten this solution. You've done your homework, you're offering it. It's just a wonderful way for all of them to kind of fit in with you under a secure umbrella. And I'm sure there's economies of scale that allow it to be a really cost-effective solution for all of those clients as well. So I personally love to hear that. I know that's going to be effective in reducing the number of incidents that those kind of clients experience. So, and that's really what I'm after, you know. Yes, I operate a private business and I charge for our services, but that doesn't mean that I don't root for businesses to be hit by cyber attacks so that I can have a good quarter. A lot of us in the security industry genuinely want to see the problem minimized. And, you know, Canada's lagging in this area. There was a study that came out last week. Canadian businesses are dramatically behind global numbers in terms of paying attention to cybersecurity. And that just results in more incidents. I can't imagine it doesn't increase cost to the end users of products and services on some level. So, you know, everybody needs to come together and offer better solutions, and businesses need to pay more attention to it. And so if everybody works together, we're going to get somewhere. Yeah,
I agree with you. And it's funny because Mark and I I think we were sitting at a coffee shop one day and we said, you know, we're looking ahead a couple of years for Dentists on Demand and going, okay, we're going to have a video consult portal. We're going to have, you know, some branded marketing, helping our clients develop content. And we both just kind of stopped and looked at each other. We went, security.
Yeah.
We need that, you know?
Yeah. Wonderful. It's really wonderful that we connected on that issue, because we've had a lot of great discussions, and I know I put you in contact with some of my strategic partners, and we talked about offering our services to your clients, and it's a really valuable part of any business right now. And the more that society digitizes business, and the more that dental practice and healthcare practitioners digitize their practice, it's just going to get worse for them if you don't pay attention. So I love the initiative that you're driving, and we're all kind of cooperating to work together with. And I love that it sounds like it's hitting home with your clients as well. So
Yeah, it's nice. It's created a really cool talk track for offices. I mean, it's the time to start doing dentistry in a new way, you know, for a lot of my clients anyways. And it's the early adopters now that are saying, hey, you know what, I can start the conversation online. I can get to know these clients, my patients, a little bit better. They can get to know me. So by the time they get to the dentist chair, they can feel comfortable, they can feel safe, and know that we've taken all the appropriate measures that are necessary to make sure that there's no virus, no spread of infection anywhere. Yeah, it's really what we're going after. Really trying to streamline the process for people. So, but we can't do it without people like DFI for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's another thing that I always tell business owners, and this is really an important consideration for dental practices, because there's a lot of choice in the market. If you want to compare a cyber attack, like say the Marriott breach, the hotel chains that had their service rewards program breached very badly a couple of years ago. So all of the consumers got upset. But after a couple of weeks or a month or so, out of convenience, we start going back to the Marriott, because there's only a certain number of hotel chains, and some, will not go back there ever. And that's fine. But when you're talking about a market where there's a lot of options like dental practice, if you have one bad incident and it drives a third or half your customers to another practice, you're probably not going to get them back very easily, if ever at all. So from what I mean when I talk about it's a business risk, you've got to consider if there's any event that could potentially cause you to lose customers, you've got to minimize the risk of that happening. And this is very much what will happen in this area. So it's super important considerations. It's not just something you should throw onto your IT person and expect it to be handled. You've really got to pay attention to it as a business.
Especially with, I mean, dentistry's become so competitive over the years, right? I mean, there's a lot of dentists, and right now they're in a very tough spot. So whatever we can do to help make life easier for them, I mean, that's really what we're all about. So Tyler, if I'm a dentist, so I want to start working with you, how do I go about that? Do I say, let's have a consultation? I want the insurance policy. I want to know what happens if I get a breach. So tell me how do you start to engage with a client?
Well, personally, I do it on a number of ways. There's, I try to get the message out that it is something that is being offered in this day and age, through social media, through podcast information that we try to get out like that. We have the information readily set out on our website at dfiforensics.ca. But if you're talking specifically about dentists, the easiest way is for them to just contact you. And if anybody has questions that can't be handled within the Dentist on Demand platform, then you guys can readily bring us in. We can have a consultation. You can schedule a consultation directly from our website when you see all the information listed about the services that we offer. And none of this all of consultations and all of this information is all free. We want to encourage people to pay attention to this, and we don't want to sort of bar any entries to the market by putting up some kind of charges or something like that. It's part of something that I'm caring about. So I want to help people through it as well. So there are a number of ways. It's just the most important factor is that people start to understand that this is something that you can defend yourself against and reach out. And if my solution isn't maybe right for your business, I guarantee you, I know a number of people who I can put you in touch with where their solutions would be perfect for your business. So that's what I mean by the information security community in Vancouver and across Canada and really North America is very collaborative. And we care about our clients and the people who are trying to do something about this problem, and we want it to go away. So we all work together. So yeah, it's.
And you're located in Vancouver, Tyler?
Yeah, we're located. We have offices in Vancouver, Langley, Calgary, and Toronto. We service clients right across North America. We've worked, as far away as the peninsula of Florida.
Oh wow!
So when it's great because a lot of times there's a huge benefit to being on site and on the scene, but that gets costly as well. And if it's not necessary, it's okay. We're there to provide support to IT. So if we need to use them as an extension of our arm to get us information from their networks or servers, it's a great way to collaborate with them. Because we're pulling things like network logs and firewall logs and stuff that may not necessarily require us to be physically on site. So, with the wonderful age that we're in terms of moving information securely, we can be there to support an IT team, whether they're internal or external, and get the job done. And really, it's just so important to find out the information quickly. So it just works really, really well.
And when you say quickly, I mean, I guess when you've had a breach, time is of the essence, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, that's part of having a plan that I always, I always point to that as an important part of having a plan, because you want to know when an event is serious enough that you should not try and deal with it in-house. And you might want to bring in an external specialist, because the longer it goes, the less likely you're going to have a positive result. So if there's early detection, if a forensics team is brought in to figure out exactly what's going on and get you that information that you need to make your decisions, then all the better. So preparation is key, practicing a plan. So we do things like tabletop exercises or war games to simulate an attack so that businesses can understand the process of identifying information and figuring out what they might need to do next and who's going to do what.
That is really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. It's a really interesting experience. And you know what, we try to make it fun, right? So, it's cool to in a simulated environment, say this is what's going on. And it's not about the technical aspects. Well, is that really possible? Or this wouldn't happen because Jim has this. And, it's about the process. So we try to encourage testing plans. And I'm a big facts and numbers guy. And there's a lot of studies that have been done through like insurance companies and things like that. And the statistics really support that, if you have a plan, you're going to reduce the costs of an event. It's going to be less costly to your business in the end. But if you practice that plan through these kind of tabletop exercises, the numbers go up even more. And so they tend to identify them in terms of cost per record. So, say a data breach results in 1 million records being breached. There's a cost attached to each one of those that are averaged out. And they really, really go down if you've got a plan in place and you practice that plan. So all of that kind of stuff is really good for businesses to do.
And I think that there's something to be said for, you don't know until it happens to you how serious this is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, how long have we been practicing fire drills and we have muster stations at work and all these kind of things, earthquake drills. In 2020, a business is far more likely to experience a cyber attack than a fire, and certainly an earthquake and some of these other events that we plan for, theft, all these other business losses that we insure against and we practice for, and we have policies in place. And somehow cyber gets kind of continually put on the desk of the IT person or not really paid attention to. And, fortunately that's changing, but still we could be doing a lot better job of it.
Absolutely. Tyler, this has been great. We've packed a lot of information in here. Is there anything that I haven't talked about that you want to tell us about?
I think we touched on a lot of really good stuff. I don't want to overwhelm, anybody with the information as well. And I know when it gets technical, people tend to get glossy-eyed. So I would just, if we've said anything to anybody that's made if anybody's had a light bulb moment, definitely just reach out. It's not going to cost you a thing. Having more information is always better than not having it. So yeah, just reach out, ask some questions, and really we're always happy to help. So I really appreciate your support. It's a great partnership for us, and I love what you guys are doing with Dentists on Demand. It's been really wonderful meeting you. Of course, I know Mark from back in the day. It's really wonderful to see what you guys are doing. I think it's a great idea, and I wish you all the continued success going forward.
Yeah, thank you. We can't do it without strong partners, so we thank you for that. So if we have some clients, like if I can't, just while I've got you, if someone wants to reach out to you directly, like how would they do that?
So you can always Google search us, DFI Forensics. You're going to go to our website, dfiforensics.ca. We have a toll-free number if you're not local in Vancouver. We have a local Vancouver number. You're going to likely get me. email info@dfiforensics.ca. We're all over LinkedIn. We're all over Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. There's a number of ways you can find us. We're not hiding.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to start stealing some educational content from you too, and maybe put it up on our site if you're willing.
Wonderful. And hey, I just want to mention before I go, actually, there's one more thing. So in the spirit of raising awareness of this whole field, I've contacted, I've become one of the coalition partners with a US organization called defeatthebreach.org. And it's—
Can you say that again?
Yeah, it's an organization called defeatthebreach.org.
Defeatthebreach.org. Okay.
An awareness campaign for all of us, and we're really trying to get the message out that this is a multidisciplinary approach. You have to have a good IT team. You have to have forensics. PR people help. There's a legal component to it, and it's just a really great place for people to get information for free. You can subscribe to the mailing list. It's just a really wonderful, informative way to get some information. So we're trying to build that up as well, and it's really exciting for us to be a part of that as well now as a coalition member.
That's very cool. So it's defeatthebreach.org.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The website. Okay, I'm gonna make a note of that. So I'm gonna. Now, can you? Do they have like a newsletter type of thing you can subscribe to? I would assume.
Absolutely do. Yeah, and I would recommend everybody do that because we're pumping out some really great content. They're all over social media. We have weekly reviews of the latest incidents and things. It's just a really great way to get information for free that's really valuable to a lot of people.
Awesome. I'm gonna go there right after this call.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Tyler, it's been fantastic. Love having you on. This will not be the last time we have you on. I hope that's okay. I'm going to get you back on here again. Just security is such a big topic, man. I just want to make sure that we're in constant communication with you. We have our finger on the pulse as to what's going on out there. And thank you for all your advice and counsel.
Yeah, it's really my pleasure, Tyler. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, you bet. Tyler Hatch, DFI, you know how to reach him. And signing off for today. We'll catch you guys soon. See you, Tyler.